Let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into something really destructive in any workplace. Manipulative leadership. It's not just, bad management. It's more like a systemic force that actively undermines ethics right from the inside. So our mission here is to really dissect how this works, how manipulative leaders break down trust, autonomy, and maybe most importantly, what practical systems, what cultural defenses you need to build to stop it taking root.
Yeah, the source material we looked at is pretty blunt about it. Ethical leadership, it builds trust, it respects people's autonomy, empowers them. Manipulative leadership, it's the complete opposite. It basically cultivates fear, distrust, a lot of self-serving behavior. It essentially tunes the organization's goals into, well, fuel for one person's ego. We really want to show you the tactics so you can spot them.
Exactly. So let's start right there at the foundation. This systematic erosion of ethics. The main tool seems to be deceit. I mean, any healthy workplace runs on honesty, right? But manipulators, they intentionally wreck that trust. They hide information, twist facts, make promises they never intend to keep, just to get their way.
And what's really insidious about this is how it forces employees into this state of constant suspicion. You're always questioning the leader's motives, wondering if the information you're getting is even real. That is the absolute polar opposite of psychological safety, when betrayal and suspicion become the norm. When you literally can't trust the source of information, well, the leader has effectively isolated you, makes communication impossible.
Okay, so deceit breaks the foundation. How do they actually enforce compliance then? It seems like it's about exploitation, not inspiration. Ethical leaders appeal to your strengths, a shared vision maybe, but these manipulative types, they seem to bypass all that rational stuff. They prey on fears, insecurities, maybe even guilt.
That's exactly it. It's an emotional bypass. It's designed to disarm your critical thinking. If a leader can make you feel, I don't know, inadequate or guilty for not working late or afraid of being called out, they can push you into choices you wouldn't normally make. And the sources, they're clear on this. People subjected to this report, just profound emotional exhaustion.
Exhaustion. Wow.
Yeah, they're tired not just from the workload, but from constantly being on guard against their own boss.
That must directly hit autonomy too. I mean, ethical leadership respects free will, right? But manipulators, they seem obsessed with control, which is where things like gaslighting come in, making people doubt themselves.
Precisely. They crave total control. Gaslighting is a classic tactic, making employees question their competence, their memory, sometimes even their own perception of reality.
Can you give an example? Like, what does that look like day to day?
Sure. Think about the leader who says, "I never asked you to do that project. Why did you waste time?" when you know they assigned it yesterday. Or they might subtly change the minutes of a meeting to reflect a decision that wasn't actually agreed upon. They systematically warp the factual record around you.
And when the facts are constantly shifting like that, speaking up becomes risky.
Immediately. Dissent is discouraged, often harshly. If you challenge the leader, you might face subtle punishment or maybe not so subtle, and you won't always know why.
So psychological safety just evaporates.
Completely gone.
Yep.
And with it goes innovation, risk-taking, creativity. But it's deeper than just punishing mistakes. This kind of leadership actually corrupts the decision-making process itself.
How so?
They hide their real motives. They misrepresent facts to steer things towards their desired outcome, which is usually self-serving. The sources use this strong phrase. It perverts the way a person reaches decisions. It makes it incredibly hard for people to act on sound judgment because they're working with distorted information. Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting, because this manipulative stuff, it doesn't just stay with the leader. It seeps into the culture. It normalizes.
Ah, right,
Yeah.
like a contagion.
Exactly. When a leader consistently models bad behavior, cutting corners, maybe exploiting team members, blaming others for their own mistakes, employees start to internalize it.
They start thinking, okay, this is just how things are done here.
Precisely. It stops being seen as wrong and starts being seen as, well, necessary, the blueprint for how you survive, or maybe even get ahead in this specific place.
That sounds like it creates a culture of fear pretty quickly.
Fear and silence, absolutely. Compliance with the boss overrides ethical considerations. The main question shifts from what's the right thing to what does the boss want right now?
And that must accelerate the whole downward spiral.
It does, because this type of leadership inherently puts self-interest above the team's goals. It damages well-being across the board. But the really deep damage, that happens when the good people start leaving.
The ethical ones. The talented ones.
The ones who have options, yeah. They see the writing on the wall and they head for healthier places. This leaves behind a culture where low trust is just baked in. and the workforce becomes dominated by what the sources call colluders and conformers.
Okay, colluders and conformers. Let's unpack that. They're not the same thing.
Not at all, and it's a crucial distinction for you to understand. The colluders are the active participants. They choose to engage in the manipulation.
Why would they do that?
Maybe they see a chance for personal gain, a promotion, more influence, political advantage. They actively help the manipulator stay in control.
Okay, so they're complicit. What about the conformers?
The conformers are different.
Yeah.
They comply, but it's mostly out of fear. They aren't necessarily malicious themselves, but they're too intimidated, too scared of the consequences to push back.
Right, and the manipulator needs those conformers to stay quiet.
Exactly. The manipulator's power often relies heavily on silencing the conformers. By pushing out the ethical people and keeping the conformers afraid, the leader builds this echo chamber.
And that just reinforces the whole toxic environment.
It cements it. That remaining group of colluders and conformers makes the low-trust, toxic culture even harder to change.
Which leads, I imagine, straight to actual measurable organizational problems. Okay.
Directly. We touched on innovation already, but the core risk is that lack of psychological safety makes people intensely risk-averse. Nobody wants to stick their neck out. New ideas dry up because failure might mean punishment. So internally, the organization just suffocates.
And externally, does this internal rot spill outwards?
Almost always. When these unethical practices or shortcuts eventually become public, and the research suggests they usually do, the damage is huge. We're talking serious harm to the organization's reputation, its credibility, its brand.
Financial decline.
Often, yes. Financial decline, betrayal of stakeholders, a crisis of leadership credibility. It can take years, sometimes decades, to recover from that kind of hit, if recovery is even possible.
Okay, so we've thoroughly dissected the poison. Let's pivot now. Let's talk about the antidote. What does this all mean for you listening right now? If you want to build a truly resilient organization, you can build a shield, right? But it sounds like it takes real effort.
Absolutely. And foresight. Early detection is everything here. You can't afford to wait until the manipulation becomes the norm.
Yeah.
The second someone with these dark triad tendencies gets into a position of power, the clock starts ticking.
So it starts with hiring, being proactive there.
Definitely. You need rigorous screening that goes way beyond just checking skills and experience.
Like behavioral interviewing.
Exactly. You need to listen very carefully during interviews. Are they shifting blame? Do their stories sound excessively self-serving? Do they take accountability for mistakes or conflicts? Those are red flags.
And you mentioned prioritizing emotional intelligence, EQ.
Yes, hugely important. High EQ traits, things like empathy, self-awareness, managing relationships, well, they're structurally the opposite of manipulative tendencies. A leader with genuinely high EQ is just inherently less likely to rely on fear and deceit to get things done.
The sources also mention specific tools, like the short dark triad or SD3. That sounds a bit technical.
It does, but it's becoming more common in screening, especially for leadership roles. It's basically a way to measure 3 personality traits that often show up together in destructive people.
Which are?
Machiavellianism, that's cynicism, strategic exploitation of others, narcissism, excessive self-admiration, grandiosity, and psychopathy, which involves high impulsivity and a real lack of empathy or remorse.
Okay.
You're not trying to diagnose anyone, obviously. You're looking for a high concentration of these traits as a risk indicator before you give someone significant power over others.
Makes sense. But what if they're already in the organization? Screening isn't enough then. Continuous assessment becomes key.
Vital. Because the standard top-down performance review is practically useless against a skilled manipulator. They're often brilliant at charming their own bosses.
Using them as shields, essentially.
Precisely. That's why 360-degree feedback is so essential.
How does that help specifically?
Its value is in revealing the leader's split personality, if you will. Their superiors might see charm, results often achieved by exploiting their team, but their subordinates, they see the manipulation, the gaslighting, the control. The 360 brings those inconsistencies to the surface. It provides evidence.
Okay, 360s. What else? You mentioned organizational health metrics.
Right. You need to monitor the data like leading indicators. Look for patterns. Are turnover rates suddenly high in one specific department? Are engagement scores unusually low there? Are you seeing lots of reports of burnout concentrated under one leader?
These aren't just HR issues.
They're symptoms. Symptoms of toxic leadership that's draining your talent pool.
The sources also mention exit and stay interviews, using both.
Yes. Exit interviews are valuable because departing employees often feel freer to be candid. They can give you specific, sometimes protected, insights into leadership problems. But don't only talk to people leaving. Stay interviews talking to your current, engaged employees can give you real-time intelligence about management issues before they escalate into a turnover crisis.
So if you detect a problem through these methods, what's next? Intervention has to be quick.
Immediate. You cannot let the behavior normalize. Any concerns have to be addressed promptly,
And accountability has to apply to everyone, even high performers.
especially high performers. A leader's ability to hit targets, sometimes because of manipulation, must never shield them from accountability for how they treat people. That sends the worst possible message.
How do you confront someone like this effectively? They sound like masters of deflection.
You have to be very strategic. Senior management, HR, whoever handles it, needs to use what some call professional confrontation. That means focusing purely on factual, documented evidence of the impact of their behavior.
Not on their intentions.
Exactly. Don't accuse them of being malicious or try to psychoanalyze them. They'll twist it around. Stick to the facts. Your actions led to X resignations. This behavior violated policy Y. The impact on team morale resulted in Z, focused on the recorded harm. Ultimately, though, policies and procedures are only part of the answer. The strongest shield, the most enduring defense, isn't a document. It's the organizational culture itself.
Culture as a shield, how does that work in practice?
It works because a healthy culture creates a system of shared norms and, crucially, diffused accountability that's much harder for one person to exploit.
So it starts with psychological safety again.
It's fundamental.
Yeah.
A culture that doesn't just allow dissent, but actually encourages and rewards open communication, honest feedback. That's your primary defense. It disarms the manipulator because their main weapon, fear, becomes ineffective when people feel safe speaking up, raising concerns, or challenging bad ideas without risking punishment.
And you mentioned earlier this empowers the conformers, the ones who comply out of fear.
Yes, exactly. Psychological safety removes the fear that keeps them silent. When the organization guarantees their safety, they feel secure enough to resist the manipulator's demands. It neutralizes a key part of the manipulator's power base.
That makes sense. What else about culture helps?
Promoting distributed leadership is key. Manipulators thrive when power is concentrated at the top. It lets them micromanage and control everything. But if you genuinely diffuse power, empower employees with real autonomy and decision-making authority, then micromanagement becomes difficult, maybe even impossible. The organization becomes less vulnerable to capture by one toxic individual.
And finally, there are the formal safeguards within that culture.
Non-negotiable. You need clearly stated behavioral expectations. Integrity, respect, fairness. These need to be embedded and consistently reinforced. They set a standard that manipulators can't easily redefine. The culture also has to genuinely value and protect whistleblowers. Transparent reporting channels, real investigations, and ensuring checks and balances like a strong, independent HR function actually function as limits on everyone's behavior, including leaders.
Okay, so our deep dive today really shows that manipulative leadership isn't just, a personality flaw. It's a systemic poison. It actively destroys trust, kills innovation, pushes out your best people, and fundamentally degrades an organization's ability to make sound, ethical choices.
That sums it up well. And the antidote, as we've discussed, is multi-layered. It demands rigorous screening up front, constant feedback loops like 360s, watchful monitoring of those health metrics,
Right.
and most importantly, building and fiercely defending a resilient culture founded on unwavering psychological safety and real accountability. For everyone, no exceptions for title or performance.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on.
Right. So imagine this. You've successfully identified and removed a manipulative leader. That's a huge step. But the culture they created, it's still likely scarred. Fear and suspicion don't vanish overnight. Safety isn't automatically restored just because the person is gone. So here's the question to consider. Beyond just removing the toxic individual, what are the three most critical, absolutely non-negotiable steps an organization must take immediately to actively demonstrate, not just declare, but show that psychological safety is truly being rebuilt and that fear is no longer the driving force? What actions truly signal that change?